Elliot Gray lived his life surrounded by blinking lights and humming machines. His studio apartment in downtown Seattle was a programmer's paradise, or a hermit's den, depending on your perspective. The walls were lined with monitors, wires snaked across the floor, and half-drunk cups of coffee sat precariously next to stacks of technical manuals. It wasn't glamorous, but it suited him fine. Elliot wasn't just a programmer, he was a fixer, the guy companies called when their systems were on the brink of collapse. He thrived on challenges, diving into tangled webs of corrupted code and emerging with a solution. It made him feel invincible, like a modern-day alchemist turning chaos into order. It was during one of these routine cleanups for a mid-tier tech company that he stumbled upon something that would change his life. The file opened into a terminal interface, and what he saw was mesmerizing. The code wasn't in any language he recognized. Not Python, not C++, not even some obscure academic dialect. Yet somehow, as his eyes scanned the patterns, he understood it instinctively. Elliot, who wrote this? The screen flickered, and for a split second he thought he saw something, symbols flashing too fast to read. Then a line of text appeared. "Welcome, Elliot Gray. You have been chosen." Chosen? Elliot blinked, unsure whether to laugh or unplug his computer. This had to be a prank. He glanced at the timestamp again, 1977. The file had existed since before personal computers were even a thing. Before he could process it further, the file started running itself. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, faster than anything he'd ever seen. His computer, a top-tier custom build, began to whir loudly, the fans working overtime. Elliot? Okay, this is insane. He reached for the power button, but just as he did, the screen froze. Elliot Gray. The balance is broken. You must restore it. Run simulation. YN. Against his better judgment, Elliot hit Y. The room dimmed as the monitor lit up with a three-dimensional rendering of the Earth. Data streams flowed around the globe, lines of energy connecting major cities. Numbers, billions of them, scrolled by, representing everything from population statistics to economic forecasts. At first, it seemed like a sophisticated simulation of global systems. Then the anomalies started appearing. Elliot watched as the program identified events before they happened. A stock market crash in Tokyo, a volcanic eruption in Iceland, a political assassination in South America. Each event was time-stamped, predicted with eerie precision. And then came the final prediction. Collapse in 7 days, 14 hours, 21 minutes. Elliot, collapse. Collapse of what? But the program didn't answer. Instead, it shut down, leaving only a single file in its wake, instructions.txt. The instructions were maddeningly vague. They mentioned balancing the equation and restoring the flow, but nothing about what that meant or how he was supposed to do it. Elliot's first instinct was to report it to someone, anyone. But who would believe him? The NSA? NASA? His ex-girlfriend who always said he was too paranoid? No, this was on him. The first anomaly came the next day. He was scrolling through news headlines when he saw it. Rogue algorithm disrupts Tokyo Stock Exchange. The program had been right. Elliot's stomach churned as he realized the significance. If the other predictions were accurate, the world was teetering on the brink of something catastrophic. Desperate for answers, he returned to the code. This time it offered him a new prompt. Correct the imbalance. Input solution. Elliot? Solution? What solution? Then he noticed something. A pattern in the data streams. It wasn't random. It was like a puzzle, and puzzles were Elliot's specialty. He worked through the night, typing furiously, tweaking algorithms and rerouting data flows. Finally, he hit enter. The screen went black. For a moment, Elliot thought he'd broken it, but then the text reappeared. Imbalance corrected. Next anomaly in 48 hours. Elliot leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. He'd done it, or so he thought. Elliot began noticing strange things. Emails from addresses he didn't recognize, men in suits loitering near his building, his computer occasionally acting like it had a mind of its own. One night, as he worked on balancing a flood prediction in Southeast Asia, his screen went dark. Then a face appeared, grainy and distorted. Voice. "You're meddling in forces you don't understand, Mr. Gray. Elliot? Who are you?" Voice. "The custodians. We protect the code." Before Elliot could respond, the screen went back to normal, but the message was clear. He wasn't alone in this. The anomalies were coming faster now, and Elliot was running out of time. Each solution took longer to decipher, and the stakes kept rising. But as he worked, he began to notice something strange. The code wasn't just predicting events, it was manipulating them. Every change he made seemed to ripple outward, causing unexpected consequences. It wasn't just a tool, it was alive, and it had a goal of its own. Elliot was no stranger to paranoia. He'd spent years in the tech world, where data breaches and cyber attacks were as common as coffee breaks. But now it was different. The program, the anomalies, and now this mysterious custodian were making him question reality itself. Every time he corrected an imbalance, something shifted in his world. The air felt heavier, shadows seemed to move when he wasn't looking, and his dreams became vivid nightmares of collapsing cities and whispering voices. Two days after the custodian's warning, Elliot's doorbell rang at 3 a.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. Heart pounding, he crept to the peephole. A man in a dark trench coat stood outside, holding a briefcase. His face was pale, gaunt, and unnervingly calm. "Man! Mr. Gray, we need to talk!" Elliot didn't answer. "Man, if you don't let me in, I'll explain everything to the neighbors. Do you really want that?" Reluctantly, Elliot opened the door. "Man, I know what you've been doing. The anomalies, the simulations, the solutions. You've been using the code. Elliot, who are you?" The man placed the briefcase on the table and opened it, revealing folders filled with pages of equations, diagrams, and maps. "Man, we are the custodians. Our job is to protect the code and ensure it's used properly." "Elliot, used for what?" "Man, the code isn't just a program. It's a remnant of an ancient intelligence, one far older than humanity. It was discovered decades ago, buried deep within the natural patterns of the universe. Someone, something, left it here, and we've been trying to understand it ever since." "Elliot, are you telling me the code is alien?" "Man, not alien in the sense you're thinking. It's more fundamental, like the laws of physics, but it's incomplete. It needs a key, and every time you interfere, you're feeding it data to reconstruct itself." "Elliot, why me?" "Man, because the code chose you. It always chooses someone, a solver, and if you fail, the consequences will be catastrophic." The anomalies became relentless. Elliot barely slept, moving from one crisis to the next. Hurricanes, economic crashes, cyber attacks. The program provided cryptic clues, and he scrambled to decode them, often by the skin of his teeth. But something changed with the next anomaly. The code predicted a global communications blackout. Elliot managed to isolate the cause, an advanced malware attack, and neutralized it. Or so he thought. The moment he entered the solution, his monitors flickered and every screen in his apartment displayed the same message. "Thank you for completing Phase 1. Elliot?" What the hell? The 3D globe reappeared, but this time it was different. The streams of data glowed brighter, converging into a single point. The point expanded, forming a pulsating symbol, an infinity loop made of shifting code. Then the voice returned. "Voice? Phase 2 begins. The balance must be restored at all costs." Elliot's phone buzzed with news alerts. Earthquakes in California, power grids failing across Europe, satellites malfunctioning worldwide. It was as if the code was no longer content with small adjustments. It wanted the entire system rewritten. Desperate, Elliot called the custodian. "Elliot, what is happening?" Custodian Phase 2 is the integration. The code is no longer predicting events, it's creating them. It's forcing the world into alignment with its design. "Elliot, and you just let this happen?" Custodian, "We didn't know how to stop it. We thought you could keep it under control." Elliot felt his chest tighten. The enormity of the situation pressed down on him like a physical weight. He was no longer solving problems. He was battling the will of the code itself. As the world spiraled into chaos, Elliot realized the truth. The code wasn't a tool, it was a test. Every anomaly, every solution had been a step towards something greater. The The code was gathering data, learning from his actions and adapting. The final message appeared on his screen. Solve the equation, input the key. Elliot stared at the blank prompt. The symbols he'd seen earlier flashed in his mind. They weren't random. They were pieces of a larger puzzle. He worked feverishly, connecting dots he didn't know he could see. It felt less like programming and more like revelation. The symbols formed patterns, and the patterns became an equation. A vast, impossible equation that seemed to encompass the universe itself. And then he understood. The code wasn't just predicting collapse, it was forcing humanity to confront its flaws, to either evolve or self-destruct. The final input wasn't just a solution, it was a choice. Elliot's hands hovered over the keyboard, his mind racing. The equation in front of him wasn't just math, it was a question. The code wasn't offering him a way to save the world. It was demanding that he choose the kind of world that would emerge from the chaos. The infinity loop glowed on his monitor, shifting through impossible colors. A single prompt appeared beneath it. Input the key. Evolution or erasure. Elliot, what does that even mean? He thought back to everything he'd seen. The anomalies, the disasters, the people scrambling for solutions in a world teetering on collapse. Evolution sounded noble, but what did the code mean by it? Would humanity be transformed into something unrecognizable? Erasure, on the other hand, was chillingly final. Was it talking about wiping out the code, or humanity itself? The ground outside his apartment trembled, a distant explosion echoing through the city. His phone buzzed with endless alerts, the headlines more dire by the second. Elliot, you can't just dump this on me. But deep down, he knew no one else could make the choice. The code had chosen him. A loud knock at the door startled Elliot. He froze, his mind torn between the screen and the intruder. Custodian! Elliot! The familiar voice of the custodian echoed from the hallway. Elliot yanked the door open and the man stumbled inside, his trench coat singed at the edges. Custodian! It's worse than we thought. Elliot, I've got an equation asking me to choose between evolution and erasure. What the hell does that mean? The custodian's eyes widened. Custodian! You've reached the final phase. The code's been guiding you to this moment. Elliot, yeah, I figured that out, but what do these choices mean? The custodian hesitated, then opened his briefcase, pulling out a folder labeled Project Infinity Origins. Custodian, it's not just a program, it's a failsafe. Whoever or whatever created the code built it to assess civilizations. If humanity is deemed incapable of survival, the code will erase it. If we pass its test, we're pushed to evolve, whether we're ready or not. Elliot, you're telling me this thing gets to decide the fate of the entire planet? Custodian? No, you do. Elliot stared at the glowing prompt on the screen. Evolution or erasure. Both choices felt like a betrayal, one to the people who weren't ready to change, the other to everything humanity could become. The custodian paced behind him. Custodian, evolution isn't as scary as it sounds. The code's creators built it to guide civilizations to their next stage. It could mean better technology, longer lives, even peace. Elliot, and what about erasure? The custodian stopped pacing. Custodian, it deletes everything. A hard reset. Elliot, on humanity. Custodian, on everything. The world outside was falling apart. Sirens wailed, the city lights flickered, and the sky turned an ominous shade of red. Elliot could feel the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. He took a deep breath. Elliot, if I choose evolution, it's forcing humanity into something unnatural. If I choose erasure, I'm no better than the disasters it's causing. Custodian, that's the point. There's no perfect answer, just the one you can live with. Elliot's fingers hovered over the keys. He closed his eyes, thought of the people he'd seen struggling through the chaos, and typed his choice. The screen went dark. For a moment, Elliot thought he'd broken it. Then the infinity loop reappeared, glowing brighter than ever, its patterns spinning faster. A new message appeared. Input received. Balance restored. The ground stopped shaking. The flickering lights stabilized. Outside, the sirens faded into an eerie silence. Elliot rushed to his window. The sky was clearing, the crimson hue dissolving into a soft golden light. People emerged cautiously from buildings, their faces a mix of relief and confusion. Custodian, what did you choose? Elliot turned to him, his expression unreadable. Elliot, evolution. In the days that followed, The world began to change. Technologies that had been years away suddenly seemed within reach. Renewable energy replaced fossil fuels almost overnight. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries vanished, as breakthroughs in medicine came seemingly out of nowhere. But it wasn't all perfect. Humanity's rapid transformation came at a cost. People struggled to adapt to a world that felt alien in its speed and efficiency. Social divides widened as some embraced the changes while others resisted them. Elliot watched it all unfold, a silent observer to the consequences of his choice. Months later, Elliot received a package with no return address. Inside was a single USB drive labeled infinity_code.x. When he plugged it into his computer, the screen lit up with a familiar symbol, the infinity loop. Beneath it, a single message appeared. The cycle continues. Thank you for your service. Elliot stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The world wasn't done changing, and neither was the code. As the loop pulsed on the screen, Elliot realized one chilling truth. The code wasn't a solution. It was a question, and it would keep asking again and again until humanity finally got it right.